Aloha and welcome back to the Ohana Packers Edition podcast, where two bros talk everything green and gold. I'm Mike Kawano, and that's Iowa Joe. Football is here, week one. Welcome in off a resounding and satisfying victory. Joe, did you enjoy that?
What I could watch of it, I did. Fortunately, I got to see most of the game, but
Okay,
for
sorry.
the first quarter, I was stuck at work, so I couldn't watch the game.
Did you get to see Hercules' sack?
No, but I got to hear it from the best voices in the world, Wayne Larrivee and Larry McCarron.
Awesome.
So I consider that a wash, just because when you can listen to those guys call the plays, then you know you're doing right.
Yeah. Honestly, it was one of those, we'll get into it in more detail, but it was one of those, that's why we picked that guy kind of moments in the game. And
that's what I got, man.
It was great. We'll get into it, but Packers are coming off of a 38-20 victory that really wasn't that close, even that close at the end of it. Joe, your first impressions on the game itself?
It's been a lot better than what a few of the past week one games have been for the Packers. It's about time that we get a week one victory, even though it really week one doesn't mean much until you get further into the season. Then it's like, okay, well, did you win? How many games did you win? So, but it's always nice to get that victory over the Bears. It's always great to get that confidence boost no matter who you're playing. I mean, a win is a win. You're going to take it however you can get it. There's a lot of, and obviously we'll get into it a little bit further, but there's a lot of things that look great. There's a lot of things that need to continue to work on, but where we're at right now, 1-0, it's a good feeling. And I know you'll be able to get into a little bit more of the technicals than I can, but I thought they did pretty good for the most part.
Yeah, it overall I thought it was a very good game. I would give it about a B+ game, top down, going offense, defense, and coaching. But yeah, like you said, it was nice to see the team get off to a good start for once, for the first time since the COVID season. It's been a while since they've looked any sort of not discombobulated on week one. You had the bad loss to the Saints, and then you had whatever the hell they did in Minnesota last year. So it was great to get off on something of the right foot, starting off with the fourth down stuff on Chicago's opening drive. Got to see a lot of the good actually on that first drive. LaFleur's play sequencing was pretty solid. Love was composed and on target in that first drive. And yeah, it was just a really nice, and they put up the stat that we've already matched last year's opening drive touchdowns by touchdown on that drive, which, it's good to get that monkey off their back. I'm sure that's something that LaFleur has been, highlighting, circling, and pointing every finger at in the team meetings. So it was good to see them get the ball rolling. And
well, wasn't there another stat like we've already scored more points or have more like 30+ point games now than we had in like the first 10 weeks last year or something like that? Or we scored more points this game than we did in
something
however
like
many games
that. Yeah, they didn't score 30. Yeah, I think if they had scored one more touchdown, I think they would have matched or almost beaten what they did in the first 3 weeks of last season, basically. And like you said, it's the Bears, but hey, it's a road start. As Bears fans wanted to believe, it was a changing of the guard and all that kind of stuff. But it was good to see just the team get off to a decent start. I know you said you didn't get to catch the first quarter, but I guess when you came in, did you get to watch the at least the field goal drive, or were you kind of still in where they're kind of spinning their wheels in the mud a little bit on offense still?
Throw the quotes up here. I didn't get to watch any of the first quarter. But I was able to catch it, and I watched the first touchdown I got to see the first uh, field goal, but then a little bit after that was my drive home, so I didn't get. I got to listen to it, but I didn't get to watch all of it. But I mean, that first drive was just amazing. It was very calculated. It was very, you can tell Jordan Love's confidence is there. Now the next couple of drives were a little bit iffy to the point where it looked like he was getting excited and he was putting too much gas on the ball than what he probably should have. But I think there was a good up and down with it, and if we can flatten that out a little bit more as the season goes on, I think we really got it. But uh, the defense is what I've got to say was this whole game. Without them holding down the fort for the most part, I mean, yeah, they gave up 20 points. Yeah, there were a lot of penalties that need to be cleaned up, but I will have to say that, well, we'll get into it a little bit later, but let's start out with I'm surprised that Anthony Johnson was inactive.
Yeah, I know that you and we kind of messaged each other back and forth about that on Twitter, and it it was one of those where going into the game, I had him question marked because it was one of those, okay, they have to get to 7 inactives, but I didn't think he would be one. But then again, you get into the whole like, okay, an easy one is Watson. So Watson is one kind of thing. And then you kind of go through the, okay, someone from the O-line room is down. They actually sat both Ryan and Caleb Jones, which we can discuss that at a different time. You have Brenton Cox, which, was a good sign that Rashawn was. I thought he was going to play more snaps than he did, but I kind of liked the pitch count he was on. And then the rest of Johnson, he kind of fell into that hole where it was kind of like, okay, is he gonna get to be up if he only sees like a couple snaps on defense, or are they gonna go with just they want all their special teamers up kind of thing and all? And I did wonder yesterday when it was announced that Innis Gaines was going to be elevated from the practice squad, and usually you don't double up at a position unless like you have a lot of other injuries at the position. So I kind of was curious, and it did end up turning out that because Gaines was up, some DB was down. It wasn't going to be one of the 4 corners, so it was one of the safeties. And Johnson, it kind of shows that he's a little bit lower on the pecking order in terms of the special teams depth chart for the rest of the safety group kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think this goes back to some of the conversations we've had in the past where really he was, when he started to come on towards the late preseason, he was like the lone bright spot in that safety position, and it kind of started showing during the game. Rudy Ford was getting burnt pretty good. Savage was 50-50 on some of it. Gaines had, I think he was more the special teams value than anything. And I guess I didn't hear Jonathan Owens' name called, so I guess that's kind of a good thing when you don't hear it called. But I just, to me, if you feel like he's going to at least be a contributor, just go ahead and throw him out there. I mean, then if he's not going to be able to handle it, then okay, we're going to inactive for a little bit. Let him get his confidence back or whatever. But I think if he's the guy that you're thinking he's going to be, then just throw him out there. He's not going to be any worse than what Rudy Ford showed. He's not going to be any worse than what, like I said, Darnell Savage was kind of up and down. There were plays that he was playing well, and then there was plays where he was the typical Darnell Savage from the last year and a half. But I don't know. I'm kind of, and I know this was a little bit of our back and forth where I said, I wonder if the knee for Johnson is a little bit more there than what they were talking about. Cause I know he missed time during the preseason over it. So like I said, I think if he's going to be your guy, you might as well just throw him out there and let it. This is a young team. They're going to make mistakes as is. You might as well see what you got in these guys before, making any decisions on anything.
I can understand that. Yeah, no. And I usually am just like you, especially with where this team is this year. let the young guys go, and like you said, let them put stuff on film that they can, positive and negative, that they can learn from, kind of thing. I thought Savage actually had a pretty decent game today. I know he didn't, he had the big tackle for loss, and I think there are a couple catches where he was a little bit off, kind of thing and stuff. But I think overall he had a solid game. But yeah, Ford struggled in and out on certain drives and stuff. But um, yeah, maybe it is the knee. Like you said, we're not in for those meetings and stuff. But it was one where it raised my eyebrows to see him inactive, but it wasn't one that I was like jumping up and down for. That was for our favorite lineman on the roster instead. But luckily, it didn't matter today. Those are discussions that we can save for another day. I do agree with you that maybe, if it'll be one where maybe we'll bring it up, we'll earmark it, and we'll bring it up if Johnson is not on the injury report at all for a week and he's not a game day active, kind of thing. Because like you said, I did think that he put some good stuff on film towards the end of the preseason. I'd have to look. I don't remember how much he actually played in that Seattle game, because he did ding his knee up before that game. So in the practices leading up to that game. So I know he dressed, but I can't remember how much he actually played in that game. So maybe it is a little bit of a lingering thing. And then, they don't want him having to worry about playing angles and then, having to come downhill on a running quarterback with a bum knee, kind of thing and stuff. So that's one that, like you said, it'll definitely be more of a head scratcher if we're like past the bye week and it's still like he's still inactive every week, kind of thing and stuff. But
and he was on the injury report for this week with the knee. Now it said he was full participant, so that's again why I wonder if there was some issue there where they were like, okay, well, we're gonna keep it, limit him in gameplay, bring up games and use one of his, however many games, 2 or 3 game call ups and go from there. But like I said, I just don't see how he could be any worse than what they were dealing with already.
yep. But I think Savage put enough good stuff on film today to work through, and like you said, it's gonna kind of be on which who starts to take more reps at the other safety position, I should say. But kind of just getting back to the offensive side of it, like you said, Love had his ups and downs in the first half. I do think play calling and personnel kind of put a big part into that, but he missed some throws. I'm sure there's a bunch of throws on film that he would like to have back. That one incompletion to Jaden Reed, I wish Reed would have fought for that ball a little more. And you had a couple other situations like that where, Love could have been just, incrementally inches better, but you also want to see completions regardless, kind of thing. But I thought once they got into the second half, and obviously, I thought it was big, even though, they had the chance for a touchdown on that missed smash to Musgrave. I was glad to see them. He came back the next play, hit the throw to Reed, and they were able to get down to field goal range. And I thought that kind of set him up. You get to Troy Aikman would say it all the time. You want to go into half with momentum, especially if you're getting the ball first in the third quarter. And we saw it. They come out and go right down the field. Aaron Jones gets to touch the ball again, and this offense just hums at a different speed, kind of thing. I think I saw you tweet it. No disrespect to AJ Dillon, but Aaron Jones just takes this offense to a different stratosphere. It was true with Rodgers, and it's even more evident with Love at going to Love at quarterback moving forward. So, we did see Jones pull up a little bit lame on his long touchdown reception. So you want to hope that he's that they did catch it kind of precautionary more than it was like a dead on pull. But you hope that he's just good to go when it comes to next week. So that'll definitely be one that we'll be monitoring going into week 2 in Atlanta.
Right.
But,
And
yeah,
it's so funny that, and we're recording this while they're doing the press conferences. Otherwise, we'd have quotes on them. But I would just love to hear what LaFleur had to say if he's going to keep still pulling the same. Oh, well, yeah, we got to create touches for Aaron Jones and we got to get him out there. It's like, yeah, but you're play calling. You're the one that's got to get him out there. But and I understand AJ Dillon has really made himself a man of the people. this whole mayor of Door County thing, this whole, you know, quad father and everything. But I don't know how many more times I can handle seeing him like fall on his face and hit the pile but not move the pile, or now he did later in the game have that really good running back screen that he got a pretty good chunk of yards on. But it's no wonder that the Packers were rumored to be after Jonathan Taylor, because they've got to have some kind of compliment for Aaron Jones, and it really just is showing that AJ Dillon's not it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because it looked like in the 2021 season that maybe he was getting into, he was filling into that role. And then, just had really a downer like first 2/3 of 2022 season. It looked like he was maybe bouncing back a little bit towards the end of the season, but yeah, it's a little bit too much of that same song that we were seeing early last season to start this 2023 season off for AJ Dillon. But they're gonna need him if Jones is at all banged up or limited next week heading into Atlanta.
Well, and there's another thing about that guy. They had Emmanuel Wilson inactive, but they brought Patrick Taylor up. It's like, yeah, towards the end of the game, Taylor was getting some reps, but he's a guy. He's not going to be. He's not going to be a lead back. He's just going to go in there and maybe put something together. At least with Emmanuel Lewis, that's like the third time I've done that to him. Emmanuel Wilson, you have a potential for a home run hitter with him. And, you don't have that with Dillon. You don't have that with Taylor. You have that with Jones, but then Jones got injured, and then there goes your home run hitter. So I don't. I mean, I understand it, but I don't understand it. And not only the part of it I don't understand is now you just burned one of Patrick Taylor's call ups. So now what? I think with the rules, he's only got two or three left. And so if you were to need him, now you don't have him unless you sign him to the active roster. And he's not worth an active roster spot. He's the guy that you call up if you need him to be called up. So let's say Aaron Jones misses the next 2 weeks because of, I think they were saying it was a hamstring injury. Then you can use the call-ups on him, and you'd have Dillon, you'd have Wilson, and you'd have Taylor. That doesn't sound horrible. I would feed more Wilson than I would Dillon, but at least you'd have that complement again. So I guess that's why they pay these guys millions of dollars to be the coaches, and I just sit here and complain about it behind the microphone. But and I know this is just week one, and we're going to have a lot of decisions throughout the season that are going to be weird, but I guess this is just me second guessing some of this stuff in a victory, which is even sad because we shouldn't be complaining about anything because we just beat the Bears.
Yeah, we can go into my theory on the running back situation is that they're just using Taylor's call ups to buy time while they get Wilson like even more acclimated within like reps with the first team and all that kind of stuff. And who knows, maybe they did injury designate or not injury designate, but they injury settled all of Goodson, Lou Nichols from the IR. So I don't know how long the designation is. I know it's 3 weeks.
I think it's 4 weeks. Yeah, I think
depending on what the settlement is, because it's 3 weeks plus whatever the settlement is. So
yeah.
If they agreed that it's a 1 week thing, then okay, then you go a little bit galaxy brain and you go, okay, so 4 weeks, and then you so you have 3 weeks that you can call Taylor up, and then you just have 1 week where you have to tread water and figure out what to do for 1 week kind of thing before you can sign Goodson and or Nichols back to either the practice squad or the active roster. So I don't know if that's their plan, but it kind of feels like maybe they're going that route. But like you said, that's something we can dive deeper into if there is any sort of movement on that front. But Getting back to the game, like you
Yeah,
said,
I know.
yeah, no, it's hey, like it's totally understandable because um those were the kind of like that's kind of the state of the team, like you said, where it's supposed to be a season of discovery for this group because they are so young, and you do kind of want to see more of the guys that they don't know about, like you said, as opposed to a guy like a Patrick Taylor. Gaines kind of fall. I guess Gaines, they haven't seen him on defense that much, but I kind of feel like there's a little bit of a reason to that. But I mean, Johnson, we'd like to see Johnson take like live snaps at safety and stuff. So those are definitely things worth talking about. But for guys who did get on the field, I thought Dobbs gave them just enough. It, I was kind of bullish that I expected a lot out of Love, no matter who started and played today. But we did see, I felt like we saw LaFleur rein in the playbook a little bit, especially on that second and third drive, because you don't have Watson and Dobbs is only playing like like at most every other snap, if not like every third snap or something like that. So it was good to see Dobbs, on the first drive, Dobbs was the third down guy. And he just made two, like his first touchdown was just a great route. Read the coverage correctly, crossed Eddie Jackson's face
Can
super
I say it
easily.
was
Yeah,
Devontae like? I mean, because that was really a sick route, especially for a guy who's dealing with a hamstring injury.
yeah.
You know,
Like
that was
it
crazy.
it was a little bit of everything because there was a little bit of athleticism to shake yourself free. I know Jalen, I know the Bears were playing a zone, but you do have to get off the line of scrimmage and get yourself in the end zone, and then to make the proper read and cross Jackson's face, and not just cross his face, but really leave Jackson stuck in the mud, in the middle of the end zone, and just like you said, to create that basically 2 yards of separation where the throw is a very clean and easy throw for Love. And then the second touchdown, we've seen it a couple times from Dobbs in the preseason mostly. We did see it in the Patriots game last year where he's got some work on some stop ball and back shoulder throw kind of touchdowns. But it was nice to see it, that connection come back between Love and Dobbs. And we heard some decent things that they had been working on that. I know that Dobbs is one of the guys who worked out a lot with Love in the offseason because they're both from California. But it's just one of those things where it's good to see that connection play true in an NFL game and stuff. So really like that. And yeah, like I said, I I'm okay with what happened with the play calling, especially once they decided that Jones was an important part of the play calling process
Yeah.
again. But I thought that they didn't like turtle the playbook without Watson and Dobbs limited. They did still show some deep looks. Musgrave was getting featured, but I think the bigger one is that Jaden Reed had a little bit of a coming out party on offense and on special teams today, and it was really good to see that he actually just had cramps and was able to, because I thought he blew his ACL out when he went up for that ball late in the game. And then he's out there the next drive to recover the onside kick. So
Yeah, but if
disaster
you
averted.
watched, he was still ginger when he got up because he didn't
Yeah.
even put pressure on that leg when he got up from recovering. But I to cover a couple of your points here, I think if I'm Matt LaFleur and Adam Stinovich and Tom Clements, I take at least one or two practices and make Love have a connection with Musgrave because he's been overshooting him. Now Musgrave had and this play was amazing because it was such a blown play, but it I don't even think I saw Rodgers do something like this because it was just such an amazing play where it was a
It
bad
was a
snap.
Favre play. It was a Favre play.
Yeah, but even then I don't even think Favre could have pulled it off because Favre just would have let it loose where he was standing and he wouldn't have tried to escape. But it was a blown snap, which is another thing we got to talk about is Josh Myers, on top of the AJ Dillon thing. But it was a blown snap. Love recovers. He scrambles out. Musgrave is wide open. And Love just lets loose a throw. And it was a beautiful throw for being such a rushed throw and a beautiful catch. Had Musgrave been able to stay on his feet, he would have scored the touchdown. But it was a thing of beauty for being such a shitty circumstance. And but it just and Love could have had Musgrave again before that, but he overshot him. But it was also part of Musgrave's fault because Musgrave slowed up and tried to adjust to the ball instead of just keep running. If he would have kept running, he would have caught it right in motion, and he'd have been gone for the touchdown because nobody would have caught him. So if I'm LaFleur, if I'm Steno, if I'm Clement, I'm taking the next 2 days at practice and just saying, "You two go work your shit out and get on the same page because once you guys hit, we're unstoppable."
Yeah, that corner route that you're talking about, I do want to see it in the all 22. To me, the way I look at it, that's a bad route by Musgrave. Because so what I thought I saw on the broadcast is and Olsen kind of pointed out is that Chicago blew the coverage. They're in some kind of cover two look, and both guys drive on the short route, and Musgrave's all alone. And Olsen did correctly point out that Musgrave needs to keep that route vertical because he bends it too flat, and it's like, and Olsen's kind of just like jumping up and down. He's like, "Go deep, like don't banana it out. Like keep going deep." And yeah, it just makes the throw because what I do want to see is I want to see where Love throws it, but I'm pretty certain from what I saw, Love is throwing it before Musgrave breaks, and that's why he's expecting it up the field. Musgrave is going more flat towards the sideline. But like you
Yeah,
said,
it
that's one
was
of those that you got to just work it out, get the details down. But also, that's one of those rookie mistakes that we're talking about where it's like it's frustrating as all hell as a fan, but they gotta do it. You know, obviously you hope that these guys hit at a 1,000% rate, but if you don't put good and or bad things on film, you're never gonna know. So the only way you're gonna learn is if you play through it, kind of thing. And it
well,
was good
and
to see the
reps.
offense play through it. Yeah,
Reps. And that's why I said, 1 or 2 days a week at practice, you guys are just going to go out on the field and you're going to work. I don't
yeah,
care if you want to bring a couple of DBs in to help you with it. I don't care if you want to get some pressure on you. I don't care what. Just you guys need to, and even throw Kraft in there because I know Kraft wasn't really seeing uh, a lot of. I mean, he was getting more reps as a blocking end, but he really didn't get any looks as a receiver. So get out there and get these in like you did with your wide receivers, because again, Musgrave is getting open. If Love can connect with him on this stuff, we were seeing in the preseason, we just saw it tonight against the Bears. There's nobody stopping him. Really, there's not, because they can't cover it. Because the minute they start covering Musgrave, then you got Jaden Reed or Romeo Dobbs, or when Watson comes back, you got him wide open. So that's something they just, and I love to see it because we haven't had this type of tight end in forever. I mean, you could say Jermichael Finley, but I think Musgraves is even more athletic than Finley ever was. So
yep. I agree with you there.
I just, I would love to see it because now we're seeing Musgrave getting open constantly. I mean, he was just wide open on that broken play too. And again, had he kind of kept the route going instead of trying to turn back to it, he wouldn't have stumbled and he would have been in the end zone.
Yeah, I don't blame him for that one because yeah, I think he saw it release. I think he saw the ball out of Love's hand and he saw it was fluttering. So I think he treated it like a sky inning play kind of thing, and he was like, I cannot miss this, and he actually almost did miss it because he was, like you said, he was backpedaling. He looked like a punt returner instead of a receiver. So I know it was one of those where I was like, even that one, it was kind of like keep running, but it's okay because they converted and they end up scoring
Yeah.
on the next play anyway, kind of thing. But you're right, like just going back to that play, yeah, that's one of those where you hear it all the time coming out from under center. You bump into a lot of shit if you're not paying attention. And I'm not sure what Love bumped the ball on, but he gets a clean exchange, I think, but then he hits someone's butt or hand or something like that. And then as he's, like you said, that's what we've heard all preseason is Love is a cool, calm, collected dude, and he just kind of go as you know, all of us fans are screaming and going insane watching it. He's just like, oh, here's the ball, I'm gonna pick it up. Like you said, Aaron probably falls on it. Favre probably throws it into the third deck, kind of thing and stuff. But Love Yeah, like you said, it was funny watching the replay because Love picks the ball up, looks at the rush coming at him, sees that he's got Dylan picking up a rusher. His O line's kind of got it, even though he dropped the ball. Literally, he steps over a couple steps to his right, and he's like, "They didn't cover the lead, they didn't cover Musgrave. I'm just gonna get it out there and see what happens," kind of thing and stuff. And yeah, like you said, the ultimate irony is if Musgrave even just forget if like running full speed, but if he just jogs facing downfield, he might just run under that thing and catch it and go, like walk in and stuff. But it's a no harm, no foul because
No, he made the catch on that
yeah,
one, and it got us
yeah,
within range to score. But it just sucks because I saw somebody tweet this. That's 2 touchdowns Musgrave could have had that he missed out on,
yeah,
and it would have been great to see him get those. But at least they scored and at least they made the plays. But it
yeah,
just, like I said, I would get those guys together and get them on the same page because if they can get in that connection come later in the season, there's no way anybody's going to be able to hold them down.
yeah. It's and that's like I said, and like we were kind of talking about with the inactives and who's up, who's down, what they're doing with roster spots. Musgrave is a guy that they've said that we're gonna live and die with whatever he puts on the field, and you know what? That's the benefit that second round pick, day one, day two picks are gonna get. But it was good to see, it was nice that we didn't just see flashes. We actually saw some connections, and like you said, the sky is the limit there. And I do think Love, I don't want to say he played scared, but I think he was playing it safe. I think he was playing a lot of like take what they were giving. Like I said, it's hard to say without watching the all 22 again, but I think that's why we got a lot of engagement to Reed. Is I feel like Chicago was tipping coverage one way and Reed was the benefactor of it this week. But it does just put a smile on your face for, like you said, what's to come, because you can't cover everybody. Like that's the
No.
thing with what they've done with resetting the offensive weapon group is it's not 2011 yet, but they've set up themselves to potentially have 2011 again, and probably even more athletic than 2011 was, kind of thing. So it's a lot to get
With the
excited
defense.
about. Yeah, and yeah, but rounding out the offense, I thought the O line had a good game. I know Myers had a couple plays that he'd probably like to have back, but overall, I thought that group just played clean. Chicago didn't really test them too much. That was one of the things that I was like, this team is so badly by a defensive head coach, no less. I was like, you're in desperate. It was only a 10-point game at that point, and I was like, we're getting 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, and you guys are doing nothing but rushing 4 and dropping 7 into coverage, kind of thing. But whatever, it was ho hum business as usual for the O line, and I thought they put together a pretty good game. You had a couple weird pass protection situations. Love's sack was a little bit of a weird play, but overall, they kept him clean and helped to put the game away when they could and stuff. But I think offensively, yeah, the second and third tries were nothing to write home about. Kind of jump and scream at your TV kind of thing. But I thought that from the field goal drive on, LaFleur kind of like said, okay, let's get this thing back under control. And Love pulled himself together too. And they just started to put up points again on consecutive drives, which honestly is something they couldn't do that this team didn't do a good job of last year. So it was nice to see them have, a string of, what was it? They went from the field goal to close the first half. They went field goal, touchdown, touch. So they went 3 consecutive drives. Then they had to punt, touchdown, interception, return, and that was it for our scoring. So it was good to see them go for like a 5 for 6 stretch and stuff, which is something they struggled to do last year.
Yeah, and the Myers thing. I mean, he had a relatively good game, but he was still making some mistakes. I know one of them, and I can't recall the play. You'll probably remember it a little bit better, but I know him and Tom had to like pull, and he completely whiffed on a block.
Yeah, it was the
And
Dylan play down on the goal line, and it's one of those where I have to watch it again, and he's operating outside in, but you gotta be quicker to recognize there's no one outside, kind of thing and stuff and all. But it's those are the kind of things that, yeah, like I'm always gonna shade more towards the pass pro is good, and when he highlights on run plays, it's really good. But you gotta eliminate those kind of plays, and it's you gotta we're in year 3, and you can't be you gotta be shoring those up at this point.
And I thought there was a couple of snaps other than the one that we were just talking about that were a little erratic, but I mean they were managed. It wasn't like one shot clear over his head and we lost 20 yards on the play or whatever, but I just he's got to clean up a lot of stuff. And like you said, year
Yeah.
3 he shouldn't be making a lot of the mistakes he's been making. So
Yeah.
I just
I think part of the snaps, and it's not an excuse because you still
it
can't
is
be
an
spraying it
excuse.
around.
Quit making excuses for him, Quano.
But Chicago was trying to gum up our running game a lot of the ways that we'll go into what our defense was doing, but they had their nose tackle jumping gaps over and stuff, and I think Myers was trying to snap it quicker so he could make sure that he was keeping an eye on his guy. But you cannot be spraying it left and right. You can go up and down a little bit on the snap, but you got to keep it on center mass. So that's definitely something that's got to get shored up moving forward. But overall, like we said, they had their ups and downs, but hey, it's week 1. You're on the road against a common opponent, and overall, I thought that LaFleur, like I said, he had a little bit of a lull after that opening drive, but I thought he pulled himself together and called a really nice game to get the Packers a good lead that they were able to kind of just sit out the rest of the game on offense.
Now, did anybody else hold their breath when they saw David Bakhtiari go down and he
Yes,
didn't look
I
like he
did.
wanted to come up?
Because I think that was the first drive.
Yeah, and he was
Yeah.
just down and he looked like he was not getting up. And it's like, uh-oh,
I
this
have
is
a tweet that
not
says
good.
"Get up, Bach." Like no, because it was one of those where he dove to like try and make a cutoff block, and someone fell on his legs, kind of thing. So it was one of those. Was like, it's not great, but I'm like, come on, and then of course he's up and makes a really nice block on the next play. I think it was one of the
Right.
third down conversion throws, but oh no, yeah, like definitely had to hold our breath there. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, and of course, there is a gigantic grain of salt on a lot of what the defense did. That being, Justin Fields is not an NFL quarterback.
No, he's a
Much
glorified
any
running back. And I've said that for the longest time. He's a glorified running back. There's no quarterback to him. It just, Bears fans, if you hear this and you want to come at me, come at me. But I have proof on my side. You have whatever you have on your side.
hopes and dreams.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a potential still there, but he's a glorified running back. And when you can contain him, then there's nothing to him. And when they finally were able to start containing him, you could see it. He couldn't do anything. He was hitting the short routes, the out routes, and out in the flat and shit like that, but he just wasn't impressing.
He hit
And
his touchdown throw was kind of a blown cover. It looked like Nixon didn't really account for the vertical on the route, and he just, I don't want to say he got lucky because he still hit the throw, but his downfield throws were all open throws. He had the one where it looked like the coverage handoff between Nixon and Savage was a little loose on Chicago's first drive, and I think he hit that kind of, or their second drive, their first field goal drive, and he hit a deep out against Savage. But other than that, like you said, everything was at the line of scrimmage, and Chicago Bears fans wanted us to believe, wanted the nation to believe otherwise, but when your fancy new wide receiver pickup is getting blanketed by one of the best corners in the league, and I think framing what Green Bay did on defense, yes, it is against Chicago, but that quarterback is a running quarterback, so it limits what Barry was comfortable doing on defense. He played a lot of zone, kept everyone, so it kind of does take away your ability to just tell Jair, go follow number 2 kind of thing. You have to play games with it a little more. You kind of say like, okay, if he's in the slot, we're gonna line you up on the perimeter because he might be running a switch route, or like if he's crossing, we're gonna have double on the other side. But
DJ Moore, 2 catches, 25 yards.
and I think
So
only 2 targets. So that was it. Kind of, it's not even like he really got other looks or anything like that. But yeah,
yeah, I mean, yeah, DJ Moore is a complete threat. But when he's really the only threat you have on the team and you're going against a team with an all-pro corner, he's not going to get much done.
yeah. I think for us going into this game, the concern you had with Moore is legit, and you can't necessarily shadow cover him because you're going to have to play a lot of zone. But I think the bigger concern for me was that because you have Moore, who is a legit wide receiver one, everyone else gets so Darnell Mooney goes down to like a wide receiver 2 or 3. Komet isn't the second target on every play kind of thing, but the coverage was great, and the pass rush, even though they were playing mush rush for most of the game instead of just this dude's back there and we're gonna go get him kind of thing. I thought they were able to get good pressure on Fields all day. I think there was a point where Olsen made a comment that advanced stats tracked it where he was getting pressured on like 60% of his dropbacks for the game. And obviously, you need Jair to clean up that blitz, because that was a beautiful blitz that Barry called on that one drive. And they had a couple other instances where Fields was able to kind of wiggle his way out of trouble. But overall, I thought the defense did a great job playing to what was the constraints of based on the opponent they were facing. I thought that was one of the more disciplined, because that was one of our big concerns, especially when we had Perone on, was that they were going to try some misdirection thing on the first play and hit us over the top. And Chicago never really had the chance to do that, whether it was because Green Bay was disciplined or the pass rush was as vicious as we, had hoped it would be against this O-line.
Yeah, and I, I think it was Olsen that said something, or was it Erin Andrews on one of the sideline interviews where she said that Devondre Campbell told the defensive line to make sure you uh, keep Fields in the pocket and we'll cover the outsides. And that's pretty much what they did the whole game, and they had him pretty much contained. Uh, I was going to look here. He had 9 carries for 59 yards. So, I mean, yeah, while he still gained 59 yards on the ground, it wasn't a 165-yard game like they did with Jalen Hurts.
He had that many yards on his one touchdown against us last year. So I mean, that's already a step in the right direction. So yeah. And like
And
we
that
said,
defensive line was playing great. Devontae Wyatt was out there doing great things. Kenny was kind of quiet for the most part, but in a way, you're kind of glad he is quiet because he's doing his job. He's not going to be. I don't think Kenny is ever going to be that flashy type of player. He's always going to be the guy that goes out and does his job and
and then
allows.
you're like, oh, he has 6 sacks at the end of the
Yeah,
season, kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, he had half of one
but he's
today.
also going to let everybody else, feast around him. He's going to open up for Devontae. He's going to open up for Carl Brooks, who got his first sack of the year or of his career. He's going to open up for the outside linebackers or the edge rushers. Rashawn should have had 1 sack if it wasn't for penalties. Lucas Van Ness got his first sack of his career. Justin Hollins got in there numerous times. Kingsley got in there numerous times. So it all comes down to those guys on the line creating the opportunities for everybody else. And I think they all did their job well. I mean, there's no complaints there. And they really held up the run game too. I mean, I wasn't too scared of the Bears run game outside of Fields because, they lost David Montgomery. They lost that's really all they had for the longest time was Montgomery. Now I do have to say, and it kills me, and I did tweet this out. I love Roschon Johnson. I loved him before or coming into the draft. It hurts that I see him in Bears colors, but he really started looking good, but they were still able to kind of bottle him up for the most part. And so, again, this is week 1, so we got to temper expectations. Next week is really going to be the big test with, Bijan Robinson and
Allgeier.
Algiers. I
Algiers. I don't
couldn't.
know how it's pronounced, but
I
yeah,
can't think of. Is it Tyler?
yeah. I know how it's spelled, but I'm not sure how it's
I
pronounced.
think they were saying Algiers. So, but I couldn't remember if his first what his first name was. But that's going to be the real test. Is Bajan was looking pretty good. Algiers was looking pretty good. So we'll see how that goes on next week. But for this week, I thought everything looked better. Even the special teams looked better. They weren't giving up much yardage. This is the first time in a long time I've seen a complete team. Everything was clicking: offense, defense, special teams. Anders, somebody needs to go give that guy a hug or whatever, and just say, way to go, kid. Now we're going to have growing pains with him all year, but he was perfect today. There was no misses.
I know I wanted them to kick the field goal on that drive that Clifford was in on just to get him another rep, but I also get LaFleur going, it's a little bit far and he's 5 for 5 or 6 for 6. Let's just go home happy kind of thing and stuff. So as much as I was like, he does need as many live reps as he can get, I do get thinking, nah, let's just go home. Like we can say that, hey, you know, and it's not like, oh, we're avoiding you. We're just trying to run the clock out, see if we can get a first down. But yeah, that kick that field goal he hit before halftime, that might have been good from 60 or 65. He boomed that thing through, and all his PATs were nice and pretty straight down the middle. When I remember, Whelan looked good. He hit some bombs and stuff. And obviously, we always hold it to we need to see how a punter looks in the cold. But like you said,
And
top
same for
downs,
Anders. We've got to kind of wait to see what Anders
yeah,
is going to do in the weather and that. But based off what we saw today, yeah,
yeah,
they were great. And
yeah.
Keyshawn, I love the guy, but he's got to learn some patience. I know he wants to take it out every time, but there's a couple of times it's like, Keyshawn, no. Keyshawn, no. Just take the 25. Just take the 25.
Yeah. But like you said, I think the biggest takeaway from special teams and defense, especially, is as much as Bear fans wanted to deny it, Green Bay had advantages in the areas that mattered most on the both sides of the line of scrimmage. And the game, it took a little bit, but it played out that way where our defensive front started to just take the game over against an overmatched O line. And you saw it. Fields was getting, he ran out of a few opportunities early on, but as the game wore on, every time he was getting knocked around a little bit, hit, run out of the pocket, you saw his clock speed up and you saw him start to make mistakes, basically to where he throws the ball straight to Quay for the interception for return. But, going back to like you said, back to the run defense. So, you look at the box score, it's 29 for 122 for Chicago, but you take out Fields is 9 for 59. So that means that they held everyone else to 20 carries for 70 yards, which is a good day. Of the running backs, Roshan was the best one with a 4 yard per carry average, and that was with an 11-yard run mixed, the one where he ran over Rudy Ford, and that's with that run mixed in there. So, we had heard all, leading up to this game, Kenny had the day where he basically said, we know that we have to stop the run. We have to stop the run. We need to make changes. And we all kind of just rolled our eyes. And, even Kenny saying it, we're kind of like, okay, like we've heard this story before. Are you guys going to do it? And by golly, they did it. So it was, I think, a lot of people are going to say it's, as friend of the pod, Jacob Westendorfer is going to say, I don't know how much you chalk it up. It is the Bears and they still suck. But I think even in the recent years, like 2020 and 2021, there were games where Chicago got leads on us kind of thing, where it was like sloppy special teams, sloppy defense, no one wanted to tackle kind of thing. Both games last year, Chicago scored opening drive touchdowns because Green Bay wasn't in run fits. Green Bay couldn't tackle. It was great to see them stuff them on the opening drive, to stuff them on a 4th and short. And the run defense did hold up as the day went on. And like I said, you can't totally ignore QB runs, but a lot of that was Field just making shit happen on his own kind of thing.
Well, because of the pressure.
Yeah.
They were getting pressure on him, but there were a few times that he should have been sacked, but for some reason he was getting, free. Even a friend of mine texted me and said that how are they not taking Fields down? Because I don't know how many times they were missing out on him. They'd get a hand on him, but they couldn't drag him down. And that takes me back to he's just a glorified running back. So, yeah, I mean, it is the Bears and it is week 1. And as you can look through the scores for the rest of the league during week 1, there's a lot of weirdness out there, but it we'll see what happens the rest of the season.
Main thing is it feels good to rack up that win for week 1, especially against the Bears when, like I said, they all had what now is proven to have been false hopes that it'll be different this time around. But moving forward, like you said, we kind of covered special teams. Whelan and Anders were as advertised. I'm just curious if there's a point where Whelan is going to tell us that his name is pronounced a different way, but
yeah,
so far so good. But the both guys were as advertised today, and like you said, we know that there's going to be ups and downs with both of them, but it was good to see the good, especially like I said, in a road start today. So kind of going into coaching, like I said, LaFleur, he redeemed himself for what was kind of back-to-back rough drives after the opening touchdown. But I thought he really tightened the ship up and got the offense back on course with some better play sequencing, better play calling. Barry, I thought, hey, maybe his ass should have been in the box 2 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
But hey, 1 week down, and it was you could tell there was a different, there was a different aggressiveness on the field. Like I said, it's a absolute bummer Jair couldn't get Fields down on that blitz they called, because that was an excellent blitz call. They overloaded it, and Jair just came free off the right side. And like you said, if it's basically any other quarterback, that's a sack or maybe even a bigger play than that. But it's good stuff to get on film, and it was good to see the things that Barry was kind of talking about, different players were talking about, were actual things that we would see on the field and not just kind of lip service, been there, done that we've had the last few years.
Yeah, and I'm going to even go back a little bit further to the defense, because we completely, with all our excitement, all that we completely whiffed on was Quay's interception, his pick 6. And it was amazing play. I even tweeted something out saying, maybe we should put Quay in at running back sometime because of the moves that he was making. And, he was taking hits and still was going. And I understand they wanted to celebrate, but they probably should have let Quay lay down, because I know he got concussed.
Oh,
That
yeah.
hit was horrible. I don't know how they didn't call that maybe a penalty, because he was already crossed the goal line.
Yeah.
But they got him up in a hurry, and you could tell he was just
his bell was rung. His bell was rung.
But it was
oh no, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say it was an amazing play. It's good to see him actually make those plays after last year, seeing him, drop a few interceptions to now he actually got one. So I'm looking forward to more. But yeah, one, I don't understand how that wasn't a penalty. And 2, guys, next time just leave him down.
I know, I didn't, because I didn't, the angle from the broadcast, I didn't see the hit super good. So at first I thought he got concussed when he shook that one tackle off at the 15-yard line. I thought that's when he got concussed. But then when you saw the goal line replay, I was like, same thing. I was like, you let the guy line him up like that. Like, if it was Quay hitting a ball carrier like that, you would have thrown a flag. But because he's a defender returning an interception, it's like, it's okay kind of thing and stuff. But hopefully he's okay. The big questions coming out of this game are, I guess the big one is, what are you going to do against a competent NFL quarterback? And honestly, I don't think we're going to find that out until I guess the Saints game, but maybe even the Lions game, depending on your opinion of Derek Carr, because Desmond Ridder doesn't look like the second coming of anything other than disappointment for Atlanta. But after that, it's just can they sustain, and how are the injuries going to affect them? The two big ones being Quay on defense and Jones on offense. That's going to kind of be the big thing to keep an eye on going into next week.
I won't give up on Ritter quite yet because this is still only a second season. But yeah, and I think Carr is a solid quarterback. I just think I don't think he's been given the greatest opportunities in the world. But yeah, Quay got his bell rung. I probably don't expect him to play next week. Just the way he was kind of staggering a little bit and the way they're kind of conservative with injuries. So definitely see more of McDuffie uh, and maybe some of Wilson, unfortunately. But there's really not anybody else that they have on roster for it. But yeah, it, we'll see what happens. This when we were doing our schedule predictions, these were the hard games to pick because they're the ones that the Packers should win, but there's also the big possibility that they don't. So, but it's going to be a fun season to pick. So, yeah.
Yeah. And like we said, that was what we hemmed and hawed over, like really the next like 5 to 6 games on the schedule, is because, like you said, they're better than some of these teams. But we saw it today where Green Bay left, a decent number of points on the field with, a couple missed routes, just slightly off target throws, things like that. So, but I do think in that sense, it was kind of good to see some of that today because you had some missed opportunities, and yet they still made plays to kind of counteract those, and they still put 38 points on the board. Like we said, something they didn't do till week 10 last season. So
Right.
it's a weird thing to say. Like it was as disappointing as certain parts of the game where they're almost it's almost good for the team to go through it, because it's better to go through those kind of things in a win than to be like, oh, we should have won that game, but we left these like 4 touchdowns on the field kind of thing and stuff. So it's better to be in this seat, honestly.
Well, what do you think? Should we crown some MVPs and LVPs for today's game?
Absolutely. Who do you have for your MVP today? So we'll start with the good, since the Packers won.
Well, this one's easy just because it's the first game of the season and it's his first start. Jordan Love's going to be in my MVP just because it's an easy pick. It's a layup, but compared to what we've seen in the past with him, he looked more comfortable. He looked more confident. Yeah, there were some throws here or there that, you kind of wish he had back, but he really is looking like the guy that we need to lead this team after the Rodgers era. So yeah, that's my guy for this week.
Yeah. I'll try to be a little different. I'll say my MVP this week was Aaron Jones. We just saw how different the offense looked. Really hope that hamstring. I saw LaFleur's comment on it that they were hoping it was more of a cramp than it was a full on strain. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. I am glad that I know that some people are going to kind of be like, well, like that kind of means two things, but I'm kind of glad they decided to just keep him out. It looked like he wanted to go back in the game at certain points, but I am glad that they said no, like let's just shut it down.
I think
Let's
had the score been a lot closer, they probably would have chanced it, but with the score the way it was, it's like, no, we're not going to chance it unless something happens. We'll let Taylor go in. We'll let Dylan take care of it. So, but yeah, that's a good choice. That would have been my other choice if I
yeah.
wouldn't have picked Jordan.
And who you got for your LVP this week?
It's a little bit harder to pick, but I would say Rudy Ford because I really didn't see anything out of him to make me a believer in him. Uh, I, yeah, he was making tackles and he was being physical, but he also gave up a lot of plays. And I don't see him being the starter. So I think if I had to choose anybody, he's probably going to be my least.
Yeah, placeholder starter is what we're kind of what you're hoping for as a Packer fan. Nothing
Right.
against Rudy, but you're hoping that, like I said, within a month Johnson is taking that other starting spot just because he's the guy with projection on the roster. And for mine, I'm gonna go with AJ. It's like you said, he's a great guy. We love him. We've seen better play out of him, but it it can't be that big of a drop off between your two running backs if you're touting that you have one of the best backfields in the NFL. And granted, I don't hold that quick toss play against him, but like you said, he had some opportunities like that one screen, a couple other runs where it's like you expect a guy like him to push the pile better, and it's like he's getting stood up for like 2 yards or something like that. And
Or he's always
um,
face planting. He's
yeah,
tripping over his own feet or getting tripped up or something. He's got no
yeah,
balance to him. And that's what really sucks.
yeah. And that was one of the things that it looked like he had coming out of college was like excellent balance for a guy his size. But yeah, like he probably should have had the touchdown on that one where Jones ended up getting the 1 yard touchdown run because I think he kicked DeGuara's foot or something like that. He almost stood up, but that's kind of the story of his career to this point is this like close but no cigar kind of thing. So it, like you said, it's tough and we're splitting hairs, but I mean, hey, it's one of those kind of wins where no one really otherwise was a glaring like red alarm. This guy had a bad game kind of thing.
Well, and not all 48 players are going to play perfect games. So I
Yeah,
mean, whereas we picked Jones and Love this week, next week they could be the LVPs just because of how they played. You
yeah.
never know. It's going to be a long season. Hopefully it's a fun season, but that just anything can happen. That's what makes the NFL so hard to pick. I've got a guy at work that I'm friends with that is a big gambler, and he always says, "I hate betting the NFL because it's too hard to pick."
These are all professional athletes, and they're all it's like Charles Barkley used to say about the NBA. Everybody is Mr. Somebody in your locker room, and that's kind of the case. Like everyone was all conference, everyone was all this, all that listing and stuff. So yeah, like we said in our season prediction last week, there's going to be a lot of expectation resetting this season just because we're gonna unlike the past few seasons where this team had playoff to Super Bowl contention expectations because you have Rodgers and they loaded up on vets and stuff like that. This time, it's the youngest roster in the league, and we're learning about a lot of these guys in real time. So those kind of question marks of are we really that good in this spot? Yeah, maybe we are. Oh, it's going to be a rough year for some of these guys. So those are the kind of things that it could change week to week just because of who we're playing, injuries, what so be it. But Joe, anything left to put on the Bears, or just happy to get another win against them?
It's great to have week 1 done and over with and come out with a victory. Uh, it I mean, either way, I'm still gonna support this team no matter what, but it's a lot easier to support them when they're beating guys like the Bears. But I do just wanna say that I am preparing to start doing my over-unders again. I just forgot to do it this week, so starting next week, we should be doing over-unders again. I was doing pretty good with them last year with Nick, so hopefully I can keep that rolling on for this next season, but I will make sure I have some of them prepared for this next week.
And that's my bad. I'm the guy who does the outline, so I will remember to put those into the outline moving forward. But no, same sentiment. It feels so good, especially after all the crap Bears fans talked all offseason, how it was a changing of the guard, and maybe the Lions will win. They looked good on Thursday night, but it wasn't going to be the Bears that were going to win the NFC North this season. That was always the part of the discussion with Bear fans that made me laugh. I was like, okay, like Green Bay sure isn't expected to win it this year, but it ain't gonna be you guys. But
Yeah, you're not going to go from a 3-win team all the way to a 13-win team in one season.
but it's great to have those kind of things set up. But for now, that's all for this week. We want to say mahalo for joining us on this week's Ohana Packers Edition podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Kawano Mike, that's me, and Iowa Joe at Iowa_Joe86. Find the show at Ohana_Packers. New episodes drop every Tuesday. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and please do leave a review for us, as we do want to hear what you're feeling about the show. Enjoy this one for another day, and then it's on to week 2. Go Pack Go, and aloha.